One of Nintendo's most popular subsets of special edition systems are the retro editions. And for those of you watching who may not know what a retro edition is, just imagine any Nintendo system as if it was going to an 80s or a 90s themed dress-up party, and it decided to dress up as an NES or a Super Nintendo. That is possibly the best way to sum up this whole library of systems in one sentence. But anyways, in today's video, we are going to be going through every single retro edition system. And I'm pretty excited to get into this because there were a couple of systems that I didn't even know existed until I researched this video. So without further delay, let's get into it. The Game Boy Advance SP Famicom Color Edition. Having been released in February of 2004, this was the very first retro edition system to ever come out, and as you can probably guess by the name of the system, this was based on the Nintendo Famicom and actually released exclusively to Japan in line with the Famicom's 20th anniversary. The system takes on the color scheme of the Nintendo Famicom with a white outer shell on the front plate and a red base on the underside. And then opening up the system, the majority of the inside is that white color, but then the D-pad, the A and B buttons, the start and select buttons, as well as the brightness button and the inside border of the top screen are all that Famicom red color. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. It is a pretty simplistic design overall, as it doesn't try to mimic the overall design of the Nintendo Famicom, but rather translates its color scheme onto a Game Boy Advance SP. The Game Boy Advance SP Classic NES Edition. This system released in June of 2004 and was pretty much released in line with the 20th anniversary of the Nintendo Entertainment System. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this video have probably seen this system once or twice before because it is definitely one of the more popular Nintendo Special Edition systems of all time. And that's for good reason, because this system does an amazing job at representing the NES. The top half of the system is that light grey color, whilst the bottom half is a darker grey color, which is representative of the color scheme of the NES console. And then there's some additional designs on the top half of the system, with those dark grey strips on the right hand side, and a red Nintendo logo, which is representative of how the Nintendo logo was printed on the NES. And then opening up the system, the design changes to that of the NES controller, and I just think that it's so cool that this design both represents the console itself as well as its iconic controller. So the design here is mostly on the bottom half of the inside, where it's got the red A and B buttons and then that sticker across the plate, which gives the design the same color scheme as an NES controller as well as the same texture as an NES controller. And I just think that is so damn cool. The Game Boy Advance SP Famicom 20th Anniversary Contest Edition. This is one of the systems that I had no idea even existed before researching this video, and it's pretty understandable for this one because, from my understanding, this is a very rare edition of the Game Boy Advance SP. I'm pretty sure there were only ever 1,000 of these ever made, so there's really not many of them out there, but I think this is a really cool retro edition console. So the outer shell of the system is actually very similar to the Famicom Color Edition we just looked at. It's got that white front plate and then the red underside, and there's not really any special design on the front here. It's more so just translating the color scheme of the Nintendo Famicom onto a Game Boy Advance SP. But then you open up the system and it has got an amazing design of the Nintendo Famicom controller on it. It's actually very similar to the Classic NES Edition, where there's pretty much a massive sticker that covers the whole surface and gives it that gold texture of the Famicom controller, and yeah, I just think it looks really cool. It just does an amazing job at representing the Nintendo Famicom. The Game Boy Micro Famicom Edition. This system released in December of 2005, and funnily enough, it released as part of Mario's 20th anniversary, which I do think is a little bit strange, but I guess it kind of makes sense because Mario also kind of made its debut on the Nintendo Famicom, although not really now that I'm thinking about it, because Mario was technically on the Donkey Kong arcade system, so I'm not really sure why they released the Famicom Edition for Mario's 20th anniversary, but nonetheless, here it is. And I've talked about this a couple of times in some of my previous videos, and it goes without saying that this system is pretty much amazing. It's one of Nintendo's best retro edition systems of all time, in my opinion. It just does an amazing job at representing the Famicom controller, and I feel like the Game Boy Micro was the perfect system to do this for because it's pretty much the same shape as a Famicom controller, and because of that, it translates the design across so effectively. And not only does it do an amazing job at representing the Famicom controller, but as a Game Boy Micro itself, the color scheme just looks amazing on it. And I feel like someone who had never even seen a Famicom controller in their life would still appreciate how amazing the gold and red color scheme looks on this system. The Nintendo 3DS XL NES Edition. This system released in October of 2014, so we pretty much went 9 years there without a single retro edition console, and the drought was finally broken with this system right here, and I must admit, I'm not the biggest fan of this design. I think this is one of the most bizarre design choices Nintendo has ever made with a special edition system ever, and that's not to say that this is a completely awful design, because it's really not. I just feel like it's a bit more of a missed opportunity. So on the outer shell, as you can see, there is a printed design of an NES controller here, and I can't really put into words why, but it just looks so out of place just slapped on the front of the system like this. Alright, I've taken a bit of time to think about this, and I think I know why it looks weird to me, and that is because of the light grey border around the controller print. I think this would have looked a lot better if the full front plate was just black. Anyways, you guys can let me know in the comments down below whether you agree with that or not, but moving on, the inside of the system doesn't have anything too crazy going on with it. The A, B, X, and Y buttons are red, and then the D-pad is black with red highlights on it as well, and that is pretty much it for this system. The new Nintendo 3DS XL Super Famicom Edition and PAL Super Nintendo Entertainment System Edition. I have decided to include both of these together because they both have very, very similar designs. So on the left we have got the Super Famicom Edition, which released exclusively in Japan in April of 2017, and then on the right hand side we've got the PAL version, which released in October of 2017. The only real difference between these is the logo on the bottom left there, where the Japanese version says Super Famicom and the PAL version says Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Other than that, they're pretty much the same system, so from now on I'm just going to show the PAL version. So anyways, as you can see, the outside of this system is designed to represent the Super Nintendo Entertainment System itself, and it does an amazing job at doing this, because when the new 3DS XL is opened up, it actually has a strikingly similar shape to the console itself, and when looking at them side by side, it simply does an amazing job at representing this system. Pretty much all of the external design features of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System are here on the new 3DS XL edition, which is just awesome. And then opening up the system, the only major things to note are the colors of the D-pad and the A, B, X, and Y buttons, which just represent the colors of the D-pad and the other face buttons on the SNES controller itself. Other than that, that's pretty much it for this system. The new Nintendo 3DS XL North American Super Nintendo Entertainment System Edition. This system pretty much follows all of the design cues of the previous system we just looked at, but is translated to the North American version of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. So as you can see here on the outer shell when it's opened up, it is designed to represent the North American version of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And I'll show a quick side-by-side here which pretty effectively illustrates how good of a job this does. And then very similarly to the Japanese and the PAL versions of this system, when you open it up, there's nothing too crazy to look at, but the D-pad and the face buttons are designed to represent the controller. So the only main difference here from the previous system is that the A, B, X, and Y buttons are those purple colors. Other than that, this system is very similar to the Japanese and the PAL versions, but obviously designed for the North American version of the console. And yeah, that is it for every Retro Edition system Nintendo has ever released. There was also this Game & Watch Famicom edition that released, but I didn't really want to talk about it. I don't care about the Game & Watches as much as the other mainline Nintendo systems, so I figured I'll just give it a quick shout out at the end of the video here, but I'm not going to spend any more time on it. So anyways, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and as always, there'll be a couple of my other videos on the screen right now to check out as well. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.